are AIMSweb defaults and how do you use them? This is a common question asked by newer users of AIMSweb. Let's talk a little bit about how to use our AIMSweb defaults and what they offer. Today I'm logged in as a classroom teacher, Mr. Johnson, who is a 5th grade teacher at Jefferson Elementary School. This is sample data. If I generate a report, let's say the rainbow report, or technically it's called the scores and percentiles report, if I generate that report, you'll notice that if I click expand, the criteria here are AIMSweb defaults for 2011-2012. People ask, well, what are the AIMSweb defaults? What does that mean? Well, the AIMSweb defaults are a set of cut scores, targets, standardized language, standardized colors, and standardized breakdowns for each report. The AIMSweb defaults in this case, the rainbow report in a norm referenced view, automatically defaults to breaking down the report where the bottom 10% of students are in red. The students between the 10th to 25th percentile are yellow. Students between the 25th to 75th percentile are green. 76th to 90th percentile are blue, and 90th to 99th percentile are in white. The AIMSweb target is also part of the AIMSweb defaults. This target, in this case, a score of 143 for spring of 5th grade, indicates that students who are above this line have an 80% probability of passing the typical state test. By default, these variables are displayed in AIMSweb. Other defaults include the labels of average, above average, well above average, below, or well below average, as well as these labels here. Consider need for individualized instruction. In other words, differentiate your instruction for the top 10% of students at your school at that grade level. Or continue your current program, meaning you should probably keep these students in core instruction for the most part. However, in relationship to this target, your core may or may not need to do some additional heavy lifting in order to move those students to a more successful place. And then down here, further assess and consider individualizing the program for that student, or begin immediate problem solving, because these are your bottom 10% compared to other students at that school. These students need the most support relative to everyone else at your school. So those are the AIMSweb defaults in essence. With the rainbow report, or scores and percentiles report, there are two different ways you can look at this report. You can look at it according to local, regional, or national norms by choosing the norm button and then changing your comparison group, though most people will default to the local norms because that's where problem solving starts with RTI. The local normative report is huge for interpreting data and program evaluation, and also allocating resources locally to do RTI. The Criterion-Referenced Report is a different way to look at this data. So I'm going to switch to Criterion-Referenced and click Display. The Criterion-Referenced Report breaks down students into 3 default color codes, red, yellow, and green. In AIMSweb, the AIMSweb defaults will color code students in red if they have a 50-50 chance of passing the typical state test. They show up in yellow here if they have between a 50 to 80% chance of passing the typical state test. And they show up in green and above the target if students have an 80% probability or better of passing the typical state test. This is your reality check report. This tells you exactly the percentages of students, according to our research, who show the most likelihood of passing the typical state test or not. In some low-performing environments, you may see that on your reality check or your Criterion-Referenced report that most or all students may be below the target and show up in red or yellow. This is an extreme example on the right. Without fully understanding how to use AIMSweb, some may interpret this report on the right to be that most everybody needs Tier 2 or Tier 3 or intensive progress monitoring, when in fact that may not be the case. What you want to do is look at these reports in conjunction with one another and understand who the average students are locally, the below average and well below average locally, so that you can distribute your instruction across Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and everybody works together to bring up this population above the bar and over the target. Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction cannot support a poorly functioning core instruction. So in this case, this is your reality in a very extreme case, but this is how you're going to break it down and kind of eat the elephant, so to speak, one bite at a time, and balance your instruction so that you can support students learning through all of the resources that you have, not just Tier 2 or Tier 3. You can also flip this report into a chart instead of a table. I click Chart, I click Display, and now my students are displaying in a chart form instead of a table. This can be used for a variety of data meetings, conversation with parents or fellow educators, and it just gives a different perspective to the data. There are lots of uses for this type of information. If you find these types of tutorials helpful, or would like to talk with a certified AIMSweb trainer about these types of reports and go in depth with how to use these reports for program evaluation, student instruction, differentiated instruction, and more, I welcome you to look at our current mini skills courses that we offer. You can find these courses at www.aimsweb.com/registration. We offer these courses in small groups, live with a certified AIMSweb trainer, over the web and by phone, so you can actually look at data, talk about the best ways to use that data, and go deep into some of these reports to really maximize the benefit of what you can do with AIMSweb. The report that I've been talking about has been the Rainbow Report, or the Scores and Percentiles Report. If you'd like to go far deeper into this report and understand all the ways in which it can be used and interpreted, from local comparison groups to national comparison groups, looking at it in your chart and your table formats to get new ideas for how to maximize this data, using this report to determine service provision through accuracy rate, and more, I welcome you to take the data analysis and delve deep into the Scores and Percentiles report. This class, for example, is $35. It's 90 minutes of small group instruction with you and 11 other people and a certified AIMSweb trainer. People from across the country take these classes to help them better understand the nuances of AIMSweb. We do it with our most seasoned consultants so that you can get a better idea of how to use this information for student planning and instruction and maximizing the value of AIMSweb. I welcome you to sign up for these or other courses, and we'll be adding new ones regularly. Thank you for your time. I wish you success and your students success. Have a great day.